The cabin looked like an old postage stamp, forgotten by winter, quietly tucked into the corner of a silver envelope. Its roof, weighed down by a thick layer of snow, seemed poised to collapse at any moment. Meanwhile, a snowmobile careened through the woods, finally clinking to a stop in front of the cabin. He was Vic, the owner of this Sydney cabin. Years ago, he had built this shelter in the desolate woods. Today, after so many years, he was revisiting the old haunts. Vic opened the door and ducked inside. The weather was so cold it could freeze you to ice. He had to start a fire quickly. He stuffed the remaining firewood into the stove, except for the chimney on the roof, which was blocked and needed to be tapped. Everything else seemed to be functioning normally. Go Bao stood at the door, facing the young security guard. He kept a sharp eye on any movement. Vic was thinking about getting more firewood to keep the stove burning. His movements were as practiced as if he'd never left the house. Just like driving past here, the leftover scraps weren't wasted. He lit a bonfire right at the door, using a stick as a stand. He filled the iron kettle with snow and scraped it upwards. In a moment, he'd be able to enjoy some authentic boiled water. By then, the sky was gradually darkening and the firewood was almost ready. Vic quickly carried the iron kettle into the house. A packet of instant noodles was his dinner, barely enough for someone of his size. Fortunately, the house was warm as spring, allowing him to sleep soundly without fear of the cold. The next day, the sun peeked out from the distant horizon. The cabin still stood there calmly. He quickly pulled some dry branches from the eaves, reigniting the extinguished fire. The warmth instantly melted the snow pouring into the chimney. The Lingdong horn had driven the giant beast to extinction, but it had also allowed this forest to evolve a more sophisticated law of survival. And just like that, it was all done. The doorway was piled high with snow, and the chimney was wearing a white cap. So, he quickly unloaded the wooden planks he'd brought yesterday. Although the cabin had been built for years, it was still unfinished. The beams jutting out from the door were actually the eaves that had been reserved. Vic planned to fix this small regret. No matter how heavy the blizzard was, it wouldn't blow through his door. Half a step, then Vic wandered over to the nearby lake. This guy had already set up a dragnet on the ice, waiting for fish to bite. He was lucky enough to actually catch a small fish. He even pulled up a lively bass from the second ice hole. Vic pretended to be calm, but he was actually beaming with joy. He was probably already thinking about how to eat the fish tonight. He just tossed the fish aside. This icy and snowy landscape was like a natural refrigerator. I have to say, Vic is quite the expert. He dug into the holes in the ice, and a bunch of lively little fish popped out. In just a few moments, he'd reaped a bounty. After returning, Gao Bao was playing on his own. The loving Vic had already prepared a delicious meal for him. While Gao Bao was hiding, he prepared some fire sticks and lit a fire in front of the doorway, preparing dinner. It was obvious that the main attraction in today's pot would be the little fish. Although there weren't any Sichuan peppercorns, chili peppers, or 13 spices, he did find a wilted carrot to add some flavor to the fish soup. He returned to the house and sat down. He cut a piece of bread and ate it with the fish. He ate it with such satisfaction that he finished everything, including the soup and the meat. He lit the candle on the table. The bonfire outside was also burning slowly. The night was as dark as ink, gently enveloping the cabin. The story of this snowy forest continues.
When you're lying in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep, if you happen to come across this video, you're absolutely in luck today. He is the Terminator of late-night insomnia. I guarantee that after watching, you'll sleep soundly until dawn. Quickly set your phone's auto-lock timer and listen along with me to today's little sleep story. As the ice and snow gradually melt, the earth begins to come back to life. When the morning sun shines into the forest, Li Kei, that hard-working fellow, has already been busy in the dawn light for 2 hours. He decides to start building a porch under the eaves to further enhance the house's style. In one morning, he digs out a square foundation pit. To ensure the house's stability, the foundation is also laid with stones. The stones dug up when building the cellar now come in handy. At this moment, he is like a tireless machine, constantly moving them. Through all sorts of careful arrangements and combinations, he has the different sized stones all perfectly sorted out, and by stacking them like building blocks, he builds a platform. Lying in the yard are leftover logs from building the house. This undoubtedly saves him a lot of time. Now he just needs to mark the joints of the logs with a compass and then use an axe to chop out the corresponding notches. This way, a square frame can be formed. After smoothing the surface, he uses a twist drill to make a hole. Then, a rustic wooden peg is fitted, which will hold them together for a lifetime. As for the load-bearing posts of the porch, thicker logs must be used for the task. This man cleans off its branches, gives it another exfoliation service, and after it air dries, it can be processed to the right size. The weather in the forest is like a woman's face. One moment it's sunny, the next a light rain begins to fall. Lee Kay is forced to rest for 2 days. To make the whole structure rock solid, the dimensions of each part must be precisely calculated. Then he can cut along the marks. After a few powerful swings, he cuts a notch at the top of the post. A slot must also be made where it meets the roof. This way the load-bearing post can fit in perfectly. He does the same for the other post. It's just that moving these thick logs is truly a struggle. Fortunately, as a 30-year-old young man, he has endless strength. Once this is done, Lee Kay begins to carbonize the wooden planks with a blowtorch. Friends who often build in the wild know that carbonized wood not only reduces microbes and pests, but also enhances its corrosion resistance. Next, he uses a brush to scrub the surface charcoal clean. This work is also quite tough. I almost didn't recognize him. With the lake next to the house, he can bathe any time. For dinner, a simple steak, and his exhausted body is instantly re-energized. The next morning, he can install the joists onto the frame. As for the floorboards, Lee Kay also adds a coat of anti-corrosion paint to ensure the floor's durability. Then, he can methodically lay the planks, securing them with large 18-centimeter iron nails. He trims the edges neatly with a saw. He carbonizes it one more time with the blowtorch, and the entire porch is finally complete. But a new problem arises. Considering the porch is too high to get on and off easily, he also needs to build a staircase. We see him first fix 2 support beams to the platform. After cutting a few notches in them, he can attach the steps. The forest is silent, with only the sound of Lee Kay's hammering echoing through the air. Thinking about the entire villa that needs to be completed, he feels he has inexhaustible energy. After finishing the stairs, he decides to build a stool to put by the door. This way, if he can't sleep at night, he can sit at the door and watch the stars. With just a few minutes of tinkering, a small bench is easily made. After a month of hard work, it's also time to take his dog out for a walk. Rugged mountains and flowing waters make a desolate place. Time to sleep, old baby. Since you've stumbled upon my video at this hour, it means you're already tucked in. Quickly grab your phone with around 60% battery, rest your left foot on your right, and let today's sleep aid begin. Tam, who enjoys wandering around in his free time, accidentally came across a fallen tree in the woods. Unable to resist the strong building urge inside him, he immediately decided to use the ancient tree to build a hidden shelter. Considering that large wild animals roam the woods at night, Tam chose to build the shelter underground for safety. He used a shovel to dig continuously downward, expanding the space of the shelter. The soil generated during the digging process also needed to be Jijong transported and handled to ensure the shelter's location remained undisclosed. Due to the unique soil structure here, digging was quite easy. After 2.5 hours of digging, the shelter reached a depth of 1.5 meters. While the interior space seemed small, the amount of soil dug up was substantial. He then moved to the root of the tree trunk and continued digging downward. Tam planned to hide the shelter's entrance under the roots, using the large tree as cover. After marking the opposite side, he used a shovel to connect the two sections. To avoid hitting his head on the roots when entering or exiting the shelter, he used a saw to trim the roots, eliminating any risk of bumping his head. As for the sleeping berth, Tam first marked the ground and then used a shovel to dig downward, creating a raised platform that served as a simple bed. Since the shelter was built underground, for easier access, Tam prepared to make a ladder using logs. He cut the wooden sticks to suitable sizes, marked the approximate positions, carved grooves on the surface of the sticks, and then installed the middle steps into place. For the shelter's heating issue, he planned to carve a fireplace into the wall, which would not only provide warmth, but also allow for cooking. He went to the top, dug downward at the fireplace's location, and used a sturdy wooden stick to continuously strike until the smoke exhaust pipe was opened. After completing the fireplace, Tam gathered some small wild sticks and neatly laid them on the bed's surface to insulate against ground moisture. After finishing, he didn't forget to lie down and test it out. He then found a dead tree, cut it into thin round slices, and after gathering enough, brought them back to the shelter to lay on the ground as flooring, enhancing the overall aesthetics. Afterward, Tam collected some thin sticks, arranged them neatly, tied them together with hemp rope, and created a simple dining table. He then used wooden sticks to fix it to the wall, making meals much more convenient. After completing the basic interior setup, he began sealing the shelter's roof. He first placed several thick logs on top as supports, then gathered slightly thinner logs and used ropes to tie them to the beams, forming the roof structure. The entrance required reinforcement with several logs to prevent the surrounding soil from collapsing. As for the shelter's door, he followed the same method as before, replicating the process. At this point, the shelter's construction was largely complete. All that remained was to camouflage it. In the wild, a hidden shelter can avoid attacks from wild animals. It's like a game I've been playing recently, Tide Watchers, where you deploy troops to defend against monster attacks. The game features a highly customizable equipment system and character development Gongnung, offering various challenge modes and activities. The character models and emotes are incredibly realistic, and each hero has their own personality, CG animations, and independent backstory. Friends who love adventure and exploration, hurry and join. After finishing, he covered the surface with soil. To blend in with the surrounding environment, he scattered some dead leaves on the shelter's surface. With this level of camouflage, you'd hardly notice it unless you were told in advance. After all the work was done, Tam crawled into the shelter, lit the fireplace, and began preparing dinner. He seasoned the meat chunks, briefly marinated them, wrapped them in tin foil, and placed them in the fire to heat. During this time, he also cut some vegetables for himself, a balanced diet for nutrition. As the fragrant roasted meat was ready, it was time to quietly enjoy a delicious dinner. At this moment, the day's fatigue had long vanished. Nothing is more satisfying than rewarding yourself with a delicious meal after a busy day. After eating and drinking his fill, Tam laid out the bedsheet and rested early.
So you're all still awake at this hour? If I'm not mistaken, your phone batteries should be around 25%. This is the perfect time to watch an episode of Wooden House Construction, which is both relaxing and a sleep aid. It's a blessing for those suffering from late-night insomnia. You're guaranteed to drift off to sleep after watching it. When the wind stops and the snow falls, what's left behind isn't a masterpiece, but a messy canvas. Trees lie scattered like toys discarded by a giant. Old Wah definitely wouldn't miss this scene. He's fully equipped, intending to clean up the surroundings of his dream house in this rheumatic land. A whole slope of dead branches and leaves was revealed. The iron shovel dug out a small platform in the soil in a few seconds. But this was obviously not enough. Lao Wah continued to dig down like a tireless little donkey, and he would not stop until he had dug out a large and flat area. The straight tree lay there quietly, Lao Wah walked forward, kicked off the thick snow on it, and then began to scrape the tree fiercely. His technique was skillful and neat. When the surface of the tree was scraped white, Lao Wah picked up the saw and sawed the tree in a few clicks. After that, he could be invited back. The shelter didn't have the carbonization process everyone had hoped for. Lao Wah dug a hole in front of the door and immediately placed the logs in it. Perhaps he was confident that the logs were strong enough to withstand the test of time and nature. He then went to great lengths to invite several strong men. They were observed and buried firmly in the deep pit. The logs were pushed inward a foot, just like the 4 loyal guards who stood upright guarding the shelter's gate. Axes and saws took turns to work on the logs, and the round wood became angular, not to mention Lao Wah's wooden house. The material is really solid. Once it is fixed with iron nails, it is as solid as a rock. Just looking at it gives you a full sense of security. Next, you have to build the main beam connecting to the back of the house. After digging the pit, you can pick up the main food and set it up directly on it. It looks very tight, so why not? Unknowingly, this guy has collected some wood and piled it into a small mountain. If it were Bald Chang, it would probably take him 3 or 2 years to cut the wood. Lao Wah was busy supporting some key structures with logs. After the framework of the entire shelter was tightly connected, he could build the walls of the small nest. You can see that the soil in the pit is not deep and is divided into several layers. The bottom is actually soft sand. Lao Wah can easily dig the pit, and the logs can be dropped, one by one, which is equivalent to building a solid framework inside the house to ensure that there are no safety hazards when living here. After finishing the walls, you can build the roof. One in place. After all of them were stapled, he took out a huge rain cloth, which is a key prop for waterproofing. After the tarpaulin was laid, the soil was backfilled, shovel by shovel. It was like adding a roof. A large insulating quilt was placed in front of the door, leaving only the door opening. All other gaps had to be sealed with wood. Not a single crack in the rock was left untouched, and even a monitor had to be used to ensure that not a single cold wind could penetrate the room. Speaking of interior decoration, the key was to lay wooden floors. Otherwise, it would be muddy and not decent. Finally, the hand-rubbed wooden door was fixed, and Lao's dream house looked decent from the outside. In the snow and ice, living comfortably inside was impossible without a warm stove. Fortunately, a smoke exhaust vent had been reserved in advance. It was easy to set up a small stove. The leftover scraps from building the house all came in handy. They became Lao Wah's fire sticks. The small flames bloomed in the house with a roar. With the help of this warm mirror, he also made a bed. After continuous hard work, Lao Wah could finally sit down and take a breath. After a short rest, he ran to the river not far away and took a walk. The ice was broken after a few knocks. It was a pity that he didn't bring any fishing equipment this time. Otherwise, he would have had a blast. After a walk, Lao Wah couldn't sit still again and kept making ding-dong sounds to himself. He had already made a small table, which he placed to the side of the bed by the door. He also installed a few wooden boards, and the bottles and jars in the house were neatly arranged. Lao Wah's life immediately became well organized, and his business was booming. He kept adding firewood to the stove, then put the frying pan on it, and began his first meal after moving in. Although it was just ordinary fried potatoes, Lao Wah was still very satisfied. The so-called shelter is just a small space borrowed by humans from nature. And true warmth always comes from the unquenchable desire for life.